caught me in a bias that I didn't even realize that I had. So I've been sitting with that and I've been working through it, and it's something that I would like to share because that's what this channel is about. It's me sharing my own process as a business owner who is making an effort to create an integrated team and to hire humans with and without disabilities, and then to talk about that process and what I'm experiencing and how I'm breaking down bias in my own life. And this is part of that process. So welcome, come on in. Welcome to Chez, Genèse, the place of new beginnings. My name is Catherine Hubert, and I founded and own a French-inspired cafe where, as a team, we are on a mission to change the way that our world understands neurodiversity and employs humans with disabilities. Our restaurant was born and is based in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's where we practice and teach our mission and model. This is our channel where we dive in deep to who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Our hope is that this content is empowering to disabled and non-disabled humans alike, and that no matter what perspective you are coming from, employer, employee, parent, friend, or Chez Genèse fan, you feel welcomed, you learn something new, and you walk away with a deeper appreciation and understanding of humanity. Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm excited today to be talking about a campaign that the National Down Syndrome Society released a couple of weeks ago, or at least I saw it a couple of weeks ago. I think that's when it really started to take off, called Assume That I Can, So Maybe I Will. If you don't follow their Instagram account and page already, I recommend that you do. There's some really great content on it, but there's been a video circulating that you've probably maybe seen through several different accounts at this point, but it originated with the National Down Syndrome Society. It is a campaign that they are running, and they've had a couple different reels that they've shown already that were just a little bit more stripped down, relational. One person who would make, you assume that I can't get a tattoo, or you assume that it was very brief, and then they released a more long form, actual kind of commercial style reel, and that has gotten picked up. It's been seen a bunch of times, and people have been talking about it online. I saw it because I already consume quite a bit of disability advocacy related content online, and so my algorithm wow, words are really hard for me today. My algorithm populated it for me on my feed already, so thank you, Instagram, for knowing my preferences. And then I had several other people send it to me after that. They're like, you have to check this out, you have to look at this reel. And so I've watched it multiple times, and I'm a big fan of it. Today, we're gonna break it down for a few different reasons. One, because I want to draw attention and highlight something that already is getting some attention. And if you are not familiar with it yet, but you follow our content, then I think you will love it, and I wanna get you on board this train. And then secondly, because there were a couple of things that really stood out to me. One that stood out as a bias that I have seen and experienced with my team before, but that I think people oftentimes still dismiss and think that doesn't happen. It does, so we're gonna talk about that. And then secondly, because it did its job and it caught me in a bias that I didn't even realize that I had. And so I've been sitting with that and I've been working through it, and it's something that I would like to share because that's what this channel is about. It's me sharing my own process as a business owner who is making an effort to create an integrated team and to hire humans with and without disabilities, and then to talk about that process and what I'm experiencing and how I'm breaking down bias in my own life. And this is part of that process. So welcome. Come on in.
Hey bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita, so you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. Your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own, so you don't encourage me to live on my own. So I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder, so you don't train me to hit harder. So I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare, so you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm,
so I don't learn Shakespeare.
E-I-E-I-O.
But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. So you serve me a margarita, so I drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own, so I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder, so I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare, so
What fools these mortals be!
I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I can't swear, right? Assume that I can do that job, that I can go to parties, that I can have sex, that I can be on stage. Assume that I can. so maybe I will.
So, as you've just seen in this reel, it starts out, it's pretty punchy, and I love that. And I mean punchy in just like it's bold, it's vibrant, it makes a strong point, it fronts bias that is held around disability and around Down syndrome in particularly, and then just flips it on its head. I'm here for it. I love it. I think it's great. It starts out by saying, do you assume that I can't drink a margarita? So you don't serve me a margarita, so I don't drink a margarita. That your assumption becomes reality. And then when it does get flipped on its head, so if your assumption becomes reality, then assume I can drink a margarita. So that comes in twice. And instead, right, in the reel, instead of being served a margarita, she is being served a juice or a soda. That may be something that as you watched, because I've seen this happen in society before, that you're like, surely that doesn't actually happen. That can't be real. It is real. I've witnessed it in 2 different ways with my team, both in the past year. This is just a friendly reminder to please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, for clicking on our video in the first place, for liking it, for leaving a comment. All of those things signal to YouTube that you like us and you like the content that we are creating, and it helps not only get our content in front of more people, but also helps us get paid for it at some point. So we thank you for doing that. Keep it up. Chez Genèse teammates, your keyword for this week is burgundy. I want to talk through those briefly, more so just providing some emphasis and awareness around the fact that bias really does exist and discrimination really does still exist. And a lot of times I get called out or criticized for being too sensitive or for picking something apart and getting too much into the nuance. You're entitled to your own thoughts of me and the content that I produce. That is your prerogative. But I will say it very much does still exist. And the reason why I'm so particular and so sensitive to the nuance and to reading between the lines and to understanding tone and language and all of that is because it makes a difference. It really, really does. So my 2 examples that I want to give you are, number 1, last summer, I went with another teammate and then several people who were not Chez Genèse teammates, but who had gone through our training program with Greensboro, which was a nonprofit that we had for a couple of years. And we all went out to lunch. A couple of us didn't have disabilities. A few of us did. Some of those disabilities are visible. Some of them weren't. So really a mixed group when it came to disabled humans and non-disabled humans. We were greeted at the door at the hostess stand, or the host stand, and I said, there's 5 of us for lunch, and the person standing there looked at our group and asked how many adult menus we wanted and how many kids menus we wanted. Keep in mind, everyone that was in our group was 20s, 30s, 40s. No kids. Not even close to being kids. But because we had some people in our group that had visible disabilities, we were asked if we would like kids menus. And my response was, no, we are all adults here. Adult menus will be fine. And then our server and our service experience was fine once we got to the table, but that was an immediate red flag, an immediate turnoff for me right at the door, that there's an assumption here that someone with a disability is childish and not to be treated like an adult. And that can be translated into a lot of different things, but in this particular circumstance they weren't going to be offered an adult menu. So that was one example. The second example was last fall. I took some of my teammates who'd been with me since the very beginning, since the inception. We were celebrating our 5-year birthday, and so I wanted to do something special for our team that weren't on my leadership team, but who had been here since the beginning. Took them out for dinner, a nice dinner in town. Got to the restaurant, same kind of situation. Some of us have disabilities, some of us don't. Some have visible disabilities, some don't. Some of my teammates were already there. Some of my teammates with visible disabilities were already there. When we got there, I said how many people were in our party, or we had a reservation. It was under my name. I can't remember. They sat us at, I kid you not, the farthest table away from everyone that we could possibly be sat at. We were sat outside, and we were sat in the dark along the fence. We were told it was because of the size of our group. That is a possibility. All of my spidey senses say that that's not really what it was, that we were sat as far away from the rest of the guests as possible because there were people with disabilities in our group. And then once we were sat, we asked for menus. Again, all of us are in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. The majority of our group being in mid to late 20s, 30s, and mid 40s. Went to order drinks and were told, one of my teammates who does have a disability, who is in her 40s, order an alcoholic beverage, and they denied her service. Said it was because they were asking everyone for IDs. She didn't have her ID. They denied service. Also, my spidey senses say on that one that that was not really the case. All that to say, bias happens, discrimination happens. It's sometimes masked through other things, but it's still there, and it impacts and infiltrates someone's perception of themselves or their ability to just participate in the world the way that everyone else is participating because of limitations that are being put on them that are unfair. That's the first one. You assume I can't drink a margarita. That is a real bias. I have seen it happen. Number two, the one that personally hit me was when it starts to flip everything around and assume that I can hit hard, assume that I can live on my own, assume that all these things, and then got to assume that I can have sex. And that one I didn't know was a bias that I had, and I got checked on it. And I realized I had two biases because I thought that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that. And then I realized I wasn't expecting that because I am perceiving this actress in this campaign to be either too young, potentially, because she has Down syndrome to have sex, or just not interested because she has Down syndrome. Both of those are incorrect. And I got called out on it, and I was thankful for that. And then I thought, okay, now I want to share this with someone else. Like, let me repost on my story or on the Chez Genèse page. And then I thought, well, other people judge me for sharing this that is not only disability affirming, don't have a problem about that, but I was like, but it's sex positive. And I was like, do I feel weird about sharing that? And then I had to get into my own bias and why I would feel like someone else would judge me for that position or stance. There was a lot of different layers there. I was gonna try to get into self-defense mode, but that's not why we're here. We're not here to defend. We are here to be curious and here to expose bias. And so that was exposed in me. It's been something I'm not gonna get into all of my process here because I don't have the time to, but just know that that has raised a lot of questions and curiosity for me about why that hit me the way that it did, and then how, if that bias is not something that I want to have around sex positive culture or around disability culture and Down syndrome culture or humans, then what work do I need to do to dig through that? The campaign did its job. It got me, it called me out. I'm here to talk about it. And then lastly, I want to share a short interview clip with the actress that's featured in this campaign, and her name is Madison Tevlin. Her name is Madison Tevlin. There's two things on there. I like double points on everything in this video. But the first one is that it was an actress who was in that campaign. And I know that may feel really silly for me to highlight that, but so often it's easy to take our bias and think this isn't an actress, this is a person with Down syndrome who's just being a person with Down syndrome in the context of this campaign. And that is not true. This is an actress who happens to have Down syndrome, who's acting and who was hired to do this campaign. And it's important to elevate her position and her role and her expertise, because it would be very easy, and probably has already happened some, that gets glossed over. So I want to highlight that. Number two, there was an interview. We're gonna show the clip here.
Way people are shown with Down syndrome in media and online, do you think that it's a reality, or that they're not real to what it's like to have Down syndrome?
So I have Down syndrome, and I always say this is the least interesting thing about me.
Amen. I think you're
Always.
right.
I always say that. People may assume things about you that they don't even know. Like, when you first want to meet someone that has with Down syndrome, you want to talk to someone, actually talk, be like interview, like ask questions and actually get to know them, than someone talking behind your back.
And you are still you,
and I can still
apart
be,
from Down syndrome. You are your own person.
I am.
Yeah, and
I
you're
can be
phenomenal.
whoever I want to be.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
I thought that this interview was really interesting. It's very short, and I'm gonna nitpick one little thing, and I'm gonna do it again. This is where, like, you're being nuanced, you're being specific. I am being specific, and it's because bias is sneaky, and it gets in there, and we don't pay enough attention to it, and then it gets internalized. So they're going back and forth. It's asking about, do you think the way that Down syndrome is portrayed is accurate through media, all of this. Madison says that Down syndrome is the least interesting thing about her. The interviewer, affirms that, agrees, and then makes a comment that says, you are still you, apart from Down syndrome. And then Madison responds to that, and she says, I can be whoever I want to be, and that's kind of the way that it ends. But that comment that you are still you apart from Down syndrome we've watched this shift. There's this shift that happens in society a lot, where either someone is the total sum, their disability becomes the sum of who they are as a person. We don't see anything about them outside of their disability, or we try to detach and distance them from their disability, and now disability is no longer part of who you are at all. What we are trying to do here is to recognize that there's a middle ground of your disability is part of you, it is not all of you. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We don't need to remove it from you. It's really unfair to say that it's all of who you are. It's not, it's part. So in this video, we watch Madison acknowledging that I have Down syndrome. It's not the most important or the most interesting thing about me. And then because of that, the interviewer takes it and swings to the opposite side, right? At first she's only asking questions about Down syndrome. Then Madison is like, it's not the most important thing. She's like, oh, got it. Then we're going to separate it all together. You are you apart from Down syndrome. Instead of saying, got it, you are you, Down syndrome is part of you, but it's not all of you, and it's not the thing that you feel is most important about you. So just want to acknowledge that that was there. I think that's it. I would love if you've seen this campaign, if you've watched it, if you have thoughts and feelings about it, please comment below. We would love to talk about it more. If you found this video interesting, then you'll find some of our other reaction videos interesting, probably most especially our Love on the Spectrum videos. We will be back next week. Can't wait to see you then.